Today, we're going to dive into one of the most pivotal battles in American history. But this isn't just about old law books and courtrooms. Nope. This is a deeply human story about the incredible courage it took to take a legal victory and walk straight into a firestorm of hate, right on the front steps of a high school. Let's kick things off with a single, chilling moment that shows you just how high the stakes really were. Just imagine this for a second. You're 15 years old. It's your very first day at a new school. And that sound, that's the crowd greeting you. This was the terrifying reality for Elizabeth Eckford, one of 9 Black teenagers trying to go to high school in 1957. It was a cry that just ripped open the deep, violent divide in America. So how in the world could a moment like that even happen? Well, to get it, we've got to go back. We need to look at the legal system that built the very walls of segregation in the first place. For more than half a century, this Supreme Court ruling, Plessy v. Ferguson, was the law of the land. It gave states the legal green light to separate people by race in pretty much every part of public life. But nowhere was its impact felt more deeply than in the nation's schools. Now, all this spending, it wasn't some sudden change of heart, a new commitment to fairness. Not at all. It was a desperate defensive play. I mean, you had the governor of South Carolina pouring over $100 million into Black schools, while at the same time publicly vowing he would shut down every single school in the state before he let one integrate. And this is where you see the real human cost of that legal idea. For families like the Browns, separate but equal wasn't some abstract theory. It was a daily grind of injustice. Little Linda Brown became the face of a problem that thousands of other Black kids were facing every single day. But the story of Linda Brown and 4 other similar cases, well, it didn't just end there in Topeka. The NAACP took all 5 of them, bundled them together, and argued them all the way up to the Supreme Court. This set the stage for a legal showdown that was going to change America forever. And this is where the NAACP's legal strategy was just brilliant. They completely shifted the conversation. They said, hey, this isn't about counting textbooks or measuring classrooms. Their lawyers, led by the legendary Thurgood Marshall, argued that the very act of separating children because of their race teaches them that they're inferior. It was a psychological attack, making separate inherently unequal. And there it is. In one of the most important decisions it ever made, the Supreme Court unanimously agreed. With those words, they just dismantled the entire legal foundation of school segregation that had stood for 58 years. But, and this is a big but, there was a catch. The court never set a hard deadline. That phrase, with all deliberate speed, was supposed to be flexible to make things go smoothly. Instead, opponents of integration saw it as a massive loophole. They basically interpreted deliberate to mean as slow as humanly possible and speed to mean, well, maybe never. So the legal victory was absolutely monumental. But on the ground, it was like kicking a hornet's nest. For many in the Deep South, the day of the ruling became known as Black Monday, and they immediately started organizing to fight back hard. And listen, this wasn't just some fringe opinion from a few angry people. This was from the Southern Manifesto, a declaration signed by over 100 members of Congress. They pledged to use every legal trick in the book to resist the Supreme Court, basically declaring war on integration. And that resistance, it took a lot of different forms. You had so-called white citizens' councils popping up to enforce segregation with money and intimidation. KKK membership surged. And families, both Black and white, who dared to support integration, they faced threats, they lost their jobs, they lived in constant fear. This quote just puts a gut-wrenching human face to that violence. This is what happened when Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth tried to enroll his own kids in an all-white school in Birmingham, Alabama. A mob attacked him, and his wife was stabbed. This was the price people paid for trying to claim a right the Supreme Court had already given them. So all of this conflict, you've got federal law clashing with local defiance, you've got hope for equality clashing with the fury of this massive resistance, it all boiled over and came to a head in one place: Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. The situation just escalated with shocking speed. I mean, think about it. In a single month, a local issue about school enrollment became a massive national crisis. It forced the President of the United States to choose between states' rights and federal law, right there on the world stage. 9. That was the number of students, the Little Rock Nine. Just 9 teenagers who, even though their families were being threatened, still had the unbelievable courage to volunteer to integrate Central High. 250. That's how many Arkansas National Guard soldiers Governor Orville Faubus called out. But get this, he didn't call them to protect the students. He called them to physically block the school entrance and openly defy a federal court order. And this was President Eisenhower's response. Reluctantly, he sent in over 1,000 paratroopers from the elite 101st Airborne Division. This was a huge deal. For the first time since Reconstruction, a president had sent federal troops into the South to protect the constitutional rights of African Americans. But the soldiers couldn't be everywhere, you know? They could get the students through the front doors, but they couldn't stop the daily torment inside, the pushing in the halls, the nasty insults, the threats. And the next year, instead of integrating, Governor Faubus just shut down all of Little Rock's public high schools. So eventually, the Battle of Little Rock was won. The schools did reopen, and they were integrated. But the legacy of Brown v. Board of Education, well, it's a lot more complicated than just one single victory. You really have to look at both sides of the coin here. On the one hand, Brown was a massive legal achievement. It killed Plessy v. Ferguson and poured gasoline on the fire of the entire civil rights movement. But on the other hand, progress was painfully slow. And there were unintended side effects, too. You had white flight to the suburbs, creating a whole new kind of segregation. And tragically, when schools integrated, many beloved, excellent black schools were shut down, and thousands of experienced black teachers lost their jobs. And that's really the question that lingers, isn't it? Brown v. Board and the bravery of the Little Rock Nine proved that you could change the law. You could even enforce it with the military. But they also revealed a much deeper, much harder challenge. How do you change what's in people's hearts and minds? That's a battle that, in so many ways, we're still fighting today.